Could it be possible that radio stations are part of the grid? Remember, when we look at the grid in terms of Tesla's special generator, using Philip Nelson's experience as a PA operator as the baseline to compare with, so we have something to compare with, because otherwise we got nothing. We're just making up whatever we like. We're even discrediting William Lyons, saying, ugh, he's the only one telling the story, so forget about it. It doesn't exist. But it does exist, and it is the power grid. It's just not ramped up to the most... It's the minimum efficiency to get by, okay, to run and get by, and still charge us with the notion that it's costing us energy to run that power plant. Well, yeah, duh, pay all the people who run the thing. Of course it costs energy. It's just not the same cost that we really think it might be. So, the power company creates the carrier wave, but you still need radio interference to lay on top of that, to ride that carrier wave. And what if the FCC was brought into being to regulate, just like the government was brought in during the Civil War to regulate the railroads, the FCC was brought in to regulate radio interference in the airwaves in any one location to create the right balance of interference among the various channels that are being broadcast in any particular area to create the right effect overall, because all of it feeds into the system in each location, just like lightning strikes feed into the atmospheric comparison between the voltage at the upper atmosphere and the voltage at ground level, and so we get the Schumann resonance effect as an average of all those lightning strikes, in addition to electropollution changing the situation. Be that as it may, radio interference at any one location might be a similar input into the total grid overall. And so the FCC is there to make sure everything is just nice and tidy. And maybe to prevent over-unity, or maybe, 2% over-unity, right, what do you call it, 1.02 COP, just enough to run the system, but not to be noticeably, exorbitantly, over-unity. We don't want to be extreme, we don't want to draw attention to ourselves, lest we set an example for other people to follow and get any silly notions that they can do the same thing on their own, create their own little power microgrid in their home. So that's what I'm thinking. It's a simple thought. It's that the reason why we have regulated airwaves is because the Earth is being used as part of the grid. It's one half of it. The other half is all the power lines we see. That's only half the carrier of the power. The Earth is the other half because it's the neutral. The hot wire is carried by the wires of the power grid, while the Earth is carrying the neutral of the two wires. So, since we've learned from Eric Dollard, it's nice to think, okay, yes, AM radio stations produce enough power that you could light a 100-watt light bulb if you connect it to the Earth energy that they're sending through the Earth. But what's the next step in thinking that? And that is, what's the radio station there being regulated by the FCC in the first place? Why not just leave it alone? Let the free market take care of it. Well, because the free market does not run the power grid. It's a government entity. It's a municipality. So I think that's what's happening. It is the Hutchinson effect, but there was one element in the Hutchinson definition that has been left out, and that's the carrier wave. And it might be that once anybody gets into the study of the Hutchinson effect, it stands to reason that they're going to find out, it's not all about just two or more radio frequencies that interfere with each other. You got to have a carrier wave underneath all of that. I don't know, I can't remember, but just from the study of what Philip Nelson has provided us, I have to assume that's the case. The proper definition of the Hutchinson effect involves not only the electrostatic field to amp up the results, and not only the interference of two or more radio waves correctly chosen for each other as a packet of overall interference, but a carrier wave for that interference to ride on top of. That also has to be correctly chosen for the situation. And that's what it's looking like, very much so. And so you have to beg the question, well, if the power company, according to William Line, is the so-called seed power, and it's creating merely the carrier wave, where are the radio interference beams coming from? Is it coming from the load? No. Come on. No, it's coming from the radio stations. That's where it's coming from. And maybe not the AM. Maybe the FM plays a role. I don't know. Because the AM and the FM are the only two that are regulated. I don't think... There are two ways to regulate something, right? You can do it at the back end. I mean, there are two ways, but both have to be covered. The FCC covers the front end of what they allow. But what if there's a frequency missing? So then you get a front of some businessmen saying, we need a new radio frequency. There's a hole there. And of course, competition, free enterprise. We want a station of our own. So, FCC, what's available? So the FCC has all the right little pigeonholes available. And then all you need is up front a bunch of businessmen who are willing to fund the provision for implementing a radio station to fill that radio slot. And so now you've got the implementation of the regulation, partly from a business approach and partly from a regulatory approach to ensure that the right frequencies are blended in any locale, because it may not be a specific frequency that has to be engendered. It may have to be the interval between them that has to be kept in mind, the balance among them, the interrelationship among them. And it might be healthy to have a different mix in different locations, so that's all not one set of standard frequencies, but a blend to create an overall smooth effect. Because when you've got a carrier wave and you put some waves on top of it, if you do it wrong, it could be kind of jerky. I mean, you may want to maintain the smoothness, the semblance of smoothness to that original sine wave carrier wave, the sine shape to that carrier wave, by having a nice blend of frequencies overall that smooth out what would otherwise be pretty jumpy and jerky if you only had a few waves to choose from. So maybe you have a certain body of waves in one area, not too many, because you don't want them to interfere. They have to be spread apart somewhat. And in another area you get a slightly different shifted mix, so that whatever's getting inputted into the power grid overall comes out to be a nice smoothing effect. I'm just guessing. I'm just taking the consequences of my line of reasoning to whatever ultimate conclusion or sub-ultimate conclusion my brain will allow me to go in theorizing, hypothesizing, hypotheticalizing what's going on here. Because all we have to do is look and see what's regulated, then it must be an important feature. And, of course, it satisfies the question, if the power company is merely providing the carrier wave, then where are the radio interference coming from? There's only one other place it can come from, and that's radio broadcast, because they are using a grounded aerial, sending most of their energy into the atmosphere, but some of it into the earth. And that some is all that's needed, because it's just a wave. It's not... Remember, the energy is not coming from the broadcast stations that powers all of our loads. There has to be some there, or else there'd be no wave to speak of. And not all of the power is being provided by the power company either. So that adds to William Line's line of reasoning, is that the power company is not providing all the power. Well, neither is the Crystal Radio Initiative going to provide all the power we need either, because that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to create radio interference plugged in, inputted into the overall power grid along with the power company, the hydroelectric dam or whatever, creating the carrier wave. Ultimately, all the power is coming from our environment, namely the Earth and the atmosphere, and so we're literally living off the Earth in a somewhat sophisticated set of technological standards that are being implemented as per the power grid. That's all. As one of my cartoon friends used to say, it wasn't Bugs Bunny. I think it was the Roadrunner. Yeah, I think it was the Roadrunner. Except a little higher pitch. Or something. I don't know. It didn't sound like a turkey. No, actually, he went beep beep. Whatever. Whoever it was. Oh, maybe I'm making it up. Who knows? Don't listen to me. All right. If perchance you're not familiar with radio interference, the place to start with, and I don't know too much, but the place I start with when I want to conceptualize, well, what does that mean, is music theory. The interval between at least two notes. What is the interval? That creates beat frequencies, and that is your radio interference right there, but in a sonic exemplification as opposed to an electromagnetic or an electrodynamic, let's put it that way, because we've got the electrostatic working its magic along with the electromagnetic in this overall picture, this scheme of the Hutchinson effect applied to the power grid, that we want to replicate in Tesla's special generator as a microgrid of sorts. Okay, that's essentially what we're attempting to do, I think. Managing our own little microgrid, which is what Tesla gave the Nazis in their each electric U-boat, is its own little microgrid system, interacting with the Earth. So the place to start with, at the very least, to educate ourselves on what does it mean, radio interference, is to go to music as an example. And Eric Dollard has spent a lot of time talking about music as part of his presentation, so there's a reason for it. Duh. Hint, 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 hint. If you haven't gotten the hint yet, and many have, obviously, but just in case, it's good to go over basics. And we can have harmony between two different frequencies, but we can also have dissonance as well, consonance or dissonance. And the most dissonant of all is the square root of 2. Now, there are other square root of primes that can be considered. The golden ratio is derived from the square root of 5. So every prime number, when you take, in this case, the square root, you're doing the diagonal of a square, right? So that square root is a unique entity to the right of the decimal point. So you can multiply it by a whole number integer, you can divide it by a whole number integer, you can subtract it from a whole number integer, you can add or you can subtract a whole number integer from it, you can add a whole number integer to it, yet the portion to the right of the decimal point, the irrational part, still has a signature to it that is remarkably intact, even though it may not look the same. It's a remarkable identity for that value, no matter what you do to it. And so this is good to know when you're dealing with intervals, because a signature gives a unique identity to the interval that we're dealing with. And although the pure temperament theory deals with whole number intervals, we have to bring up non-whole number intervals because it is a part and parcel. It's a feature. It's a possible way to go when you're trying to deal with an interval, a radio interference interval between two or more radio frequencies, or electrostatic frequencies. The whole mix. So the tritone in music, which stands between the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth, is the most destructive value in music, as an example, if destruction is what you're looking for. Harmony, of course, is the tonic, unity. Two notes, two frequencies, they're exactly alike. They're just coming from two different sources, and they're in phase with each other as well. That's the most strongest harmony. But there are other harmonies, as we know. There's the perfect eighth, there's the perfect fifth, yada yada. And those have to do with the golden ratio. But then there are proportional ratios that are similar but slightly different that have to do with the silver ratio. And it's good to keep this in mind because the silver ratio is not native to this planet, it's native to our solar system. Our planet is an import from some other place. Charlie Lutz would say it's from the Pleiades, along with the Cetaceans on board. He didn't put it that way. That's not a direct quote. He said the Cetaceans are from the Pleiades. I'm saying the whole kit and caboodle. The Earth is from the Pleiades, and it just brought along the Cetacean population of animals along with them. Excuse me, humans. Population of humans along with them. Along with the Earth, I mean. Because they are human, you know. Duh. Because they have sex for pleasure, that's why. Because they know what sex is. Because they know that God is in the sexual experience. So, they know what God is. Unlike all the other animals who don't know what God is. And claim that God doesn't exist. Like Lucifer. Who's an animal at this point. If he doesn't know it, he's getting there. He'll come to the realization at some point. So, the whole solar system is the silver ratio, and that's exemplified by the dimensions of the dollar bill. Well, the golden ratio is exemplified by the dimensions of the credit card. And the golden ratio is native to this planet, but the silver ratio is foreign to this planet. But there's an import of population on this planet that's minor by comparison to the majority of this planet who are native to this planet, and they have only the golden ratio in their soul memory from lifetime to lifetime because they're young souls and they are native to this planet. But a smaller segment of the population on this planet is not native to this planet. Instead is native, are emigres from some other planet in our solar system. I'm guessing the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter used to be a planet. And we have a bit of a destructive bent to ourselves. Duh, just look at the Earth. What's happening. But we have the memory of the silver ratio in our consciousness. And we see it in the Renaissance, Da Vinci and others bringing it out. And we see it in our money. It's right there in front of our faces. But we are encouraged to emphasize the use of digital money over paper money, and that's why the golden ratio is in the credit card and not the other way around, and the silver ratio is in the dollar bill and not the other way around. Yet, we still have dollar bills in our pocket, right? So, obviously, the old souls need that. They don't want to give up the silver ratio just yet, because it's still resonant in their consciousness, coming from their soul. Even though their body doesn't generate that ratio. The body generates the ratio for the entire planet, the golden ratio. But the memory in the soul, subliminal memory, is coming forth in a very subliminal way, suggesting that there's something missing. And so it's satisfied. We got a dollar bill in front of our face, and it satisfies us that the silver ratio is there. Now Richard Wagner, is a soul who exemplified that music from that other system of music, the silver ratio system of music, which is a very different system. It's 16 chromatic notes spanning not a perfect eighth, but a major tenth. In other words, a major third plus a perfect eighth of 16 chromatic notes that are very similar in pitch to our system of music native to this planet, similar enough that we're able to fit in, we're able to get by, finishing off our evolution here on this planet without having our other planet to finish off of, and we're a little nuts to try to finish off our evolution on that silver ratio basis, because we already blew up a planet. We don't want to encourage ourselves to repeat the experience. We already blew off the atmosphere on the moon, according to Charlie Lutz, before coming here to the Earth, so we didn't come directly here. We went to the moon first, the Earth's moon, blew off the atmosphere. So slowly we're learning, hopefully, not to blow things up where we live. Hopefully, what else can I say about intervals? Oh, the silver ratio was pegged by a Danish observer using the phrase sacred cut. If you look up in Scientific America, there's an archaeological team, a husband and wife team, who studied the garden apartment complexes built in the coastal town of Ostia, Italy, during the time of the 1st and 2nd century A.D., during the Roman, period, in the height of their civilization. And he called it the sacred cut for reasons of his own. I will tell you my reason why he chose to call it that. I think because when I studied the matter of the infinite range of golden ratios ensconced within regular polygons of odd number of sides, the even number of sides have a completely different system to them, based on the square root of 2. All of them do. And if you start to interrelate one even-sided polygon with another, you start getting a limited set of 5, which I have not been able to remember what they are, except the one, which is the sacred cut, the relationship between the square and the octagon inside the square. When you lob off the 4 corners of a square and get 8 sides to a regular octagon, and the proportional relationship between the side of the octagon and the side of the square around it gives us this over ratio. Well, the sacred cut has to do with, the cut has to do with the use of a compass and straight edge to be able to create it. You need only a straight edge and compass. And I don't mean the compass with the needle. I mean the compass that you use to draw in drafting. It's the sacred use of power, because the square root of 2 is the most destructive and hence the most powerful interval in music, at least in terms of its destructive value. And the interrelationship between 2 even-sided polygons in this limited set of 5 different systems that are available, one of which is the silver ratio that we know of, it's the sacred use of power, that the altruistic, which is what makes it sacred. We only use power for altruistic purposes. If we use it for anything else, then that's when it becomes corrupted. That's when it becomes self-destructive. Power does not corrupt in and of itself. It depends how you use it. Remember Archimedes? Give me a lever and I will move the world. Well, that's power. You wouldn't think of that as being hurtful, but think of somebody on a teeter-totter. That's a lever. And you're heavier than they are. And you don't pay attention to your difference in weight, and you go make the other person on the other end go flying off, because you don't care. You're just having fun, bouncing at full force. And the other person is like half your weight, and they go, hey, wait a second. Easy, easy. I want to have fun. I don't care what you think, Oh, I shouldn't talk. I should take my own advice, right? So, the sacred use of power is the altruistic use of power. Yeah, I should take my own advice, shouldn't I? No further comment needed. And that's my interpretation of sacred power, or sacred cut, applied to the silver ratio. And that's probably why we're here on this planet Earth finishing out our evolution, because we don't have it in our habit pattern to be altruistic when it comes to the use of power. Every civilization, we've mowed down all the trees. I'm surprised in somebody's dissertation on Stonehenge and the other rock henges of England. England used to be covered with a forest, and now they have little splotches of forest here and there, and it's mostly grassland. They're lucky. They're so far north they can afford to have grassland come in and replace the missing forest. We're not so lucky in the Gobi Desert, which used to be covered with a forest. We're not so lucky in the Sahara. We're in the Middle East. We're not so lucky in the Kalahari Desert on the southern western shore of Africa. There are deserts around this planet. We're not so lucky in the southwest United States. This planet used to be covered in a forest, because we're supposed to have a forest. For various reasons I won't get into, because that's really off on another topic, because I'm already away from intervals. But we have had a destructive bent. Probably ever since this smaller segment of the population has started to become inborn onto this planet. We rape the planet surface while it's still above waterline. we could do other things wrong, and continents can sink, but while the continent is still above water, we do some atrocious things that are so obvious, like raping the planet of its forests and not putting it back. What are we doing to put the forest back in the Sahara? Well, we could take the advice of Trevor Constable. He set an example. We literally could make rain on a constant basis on the fringes of any desert and shrink that desert over the decades. In a matter of 2, maybe 3 generations at the most, we could literally wipe out all the deserts if we wanted to. But we don't bother. Instead, they're getting bigger instead of smaller. So, we've got this destructive bent. We do not altruistically make use of power. We selfishly make use of power, which is very narrow mind. As Maharishi would say, selfish is small fish. We have a very small consciousness. We care about our own little nose, and that's it. We don't care about anybody else's. And that's why we had to lose our planet. Because collectively, our entire planetary consciousness were totally non-altruistic. Just thinking about herself. Hey, look at me. I'm a prime example of that. And I only bring this up because I was, involved in a responsible sense for the destruction of that planet, turning it into an asteroid belt. So I'm kind of speaking from my own experience. Front and center, right up here. You're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. If JFK should ever come back and incarnate and become evolved enough, he'll start remembering that past lifetime, what role he played. But he paid off that karma already recently, so he's well on his way to getting over the burden, or if he hasn't already, of what role he played, in front and center in what had happened. But collectively, the whole planet was contributing. Everybody was contributing in some form or another, small or great. It doesn't have to be great, but it adds up. And that's usually what happens when you get collective consciousness all thinking along the same line. It doesn't have to be much. Hey, how many litter bugs does it take to spoil a highway? So when you get stopped by a cop and he writes out a ticket, it was only me. I'm not doing anything. One little piece of litter. Yeah. Tell that to the other litter bugs. Okay, so I think I've covered enough of the main topic and some sidebars. It'll help round this out a little bit. Okay.